Hello and welcome to episode 65 of the Wine Educate podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Close, and this is a continuation of our German wine laws. If you have not listened to Tuesday's episode covering the German wine laws at the level 2 level, please do go back and have a listen to that first before you listen to this, because it'll all just make a lot of sense. So in this Thursday episode, we're covering the German wine laws at the level 3 level. It's so funny. I went back looking in that book. Oh, it's dense, right? And I was like, oh, the little box where they have the German wine law. And I was like, oh, well, how much more are they really going to add? Well, they do add quite a few curveballs for level 3, and I will talk about them. But I think it's really important put all this into context to kind of zoom out and talk about why these laws have come into place and a little bit of the history of wine laws in Germany overall. So if you look at Germany and German winemaking, very long and rich history. There's this gorgeous map from 17 something or other showing the Mosel, so the Mosel, Saar, Ruhr, all the 3 different parts, and all these beautiful, specific vineyard sites named, meticulously labeled and spelled out. And indeed, if you have a chance to take a boat down the Mosel, it's really fascinating because it's got quite a few twists and turns, and you'll be going around the corner and you'll see one side of the bank sort of rising up from the river and a patchwork of different vineyards. And then these vineyards are facing south, right? This is a cool region, so it's maximizing all the sun exposure it can get. And then you cruise on past, turn the corner, and you look up and it's just a forest. Because these are the sides of the slope that are not facing south, that don't have that maximum exposure to ripen those grapes in this cool climate. They had this way of deciding where to plant new grapes, and pretty much it was where the snow melted first. Makes a lot of sense because that would be one of the warmest sites. So, long history of the German winemakers really knowing their sites, mapping them out, and understanding where the better wines were coming from, which sites. So this is important because along comes the 1971 wine law. Now, this isn't in your level 3 book, but I think it's important. It's going to help you remember the other 2 things. So Germany was recovering from the war, and the EU was sort of percolating, getting going, and everyone wanted to be prosperous and to modernize and simplify. So in 1971, Germans passed some wine laws that unfortunately kind of wiped out a lot of the nuance of these individual sites. It lumped them all together into larger overall areas and put a lot of emphasis into must wait and ripeness, which is what we talked about on Tuesday, right? And created those categories that really valued the must wait over everything else. And it's easy for us to look at that and be like, boo, why'd you do that, Germany? Why are you messing up all these beautiful sites that for hundreds of years we knew that these were the best grapes coming from? All right, well, you kind of have to put yourself back then during that time. And it really was a different time of wanting to be an integral part of the rest of Europe, wanting to be prosperous and modernize and to compete globally. Okay. So cut to, there is a association. Now, this is new. This comes up in your level 3 book, the VDP, the Verband Deutscher Prädikatsweingüter, which roughly translates to Association of German Prädikat Wine Estates. This group has been around for a long time. It was founded in 1910 had a different name back in the day. Used to be called the Association of German Natural Wine Auctioneers. How's that for a name? Natural wine. It meant something very different back then than it does today, but still, I find it interesting. And they formed as a reaction to chaptalization. So chaptalization is when folks add sugar to the grape must before fermentation. It is legal, but these guys didn't like it. They thought it was diluting quality, so they banded together to make wines together that were not chaptalized. They have morphed over the years, but basically still giving a lot of importance to quality, meaning watching the yields, they don't get too high, letting wines ferment naturally, meaning don't add sugar, and giving credit where credit's due for these better sites. So the modern version of the VDP is this very well-respected, non-governmental, and this is important, these are private wine owners that created this group and still manage the group. It is not government operated, but very high standards of quality. And it's a big pushback to this 1971 law. So they had their own standards and then their own classification, which was launched in 2002 and fully implemented in 2012. And essentially what they're doing, and your book lists them all, so you can go and reference them, but they're mirroring the classification system in Burgundy. It's really interesting. So they have a regional level, a village level, and then the Erste Lage, the first site, meaning like Premier Cru, and then Grosse Lage, which is the great site, like a Grand Cru. Okay, very much mirroring the Burgundian system because their sites were mapped out just as meticulously as the sites in Burgundy have been mapped out as well. Years and years of recognizing where the quality regions are. And also with an emphasis on dryness and recognizing wines that are dry that are extraordinary wines. And this is where you have the GG wines are always made in a dry style and come from the very best sites. It's pretty easy to spot one of these wines because they've got this very grand, stylized eagle on the packaging. So keep an eye out for the eagle, and that means that this wine has been approved and accepted into the VDP. It is very prestigious to be part of this group and not easy. I remember listening to a podcast, Florian Lauer, from Peter Lauer Vineyard, saying that it took them, I think like 6 or 7 years to get approval to be part of this group. So not easy, but again, very high standards of quality and very influential because along comes the 2021 wine law changes. These wine law changes are governmental changes. So in essence, the P has influenced the German government to kind of roll back with these large generalized wine laws and into adopting more of this pyramid classification system of which we're pretty familiar with in Burgundy and that the VDP has implemented for themselves and their members. A big response and shift towards site recognition, which is wonderful. So if we take it back to all of our German classifications, it's a good review. Also, we're adding one. For level 2, we just talked about 3. We're adding the 4th, which is the very, very bottom, which is Deutscher Wein, which means it's basic wine. Then we have Landwein, Qualitätswein, Prädikatswein, and now we have wine from recognized vineyard sites. This is the newest tier, and there's a vineyard hierarchy by geographic origin. So the smaller the land, the higher the quality the wine is to be considered. It is essentially a pyramid hierarchy classification. And these names very much mirror what the VDP was doing and also what Burgundy's doing with first growths and great growths terms used to indicate the quality. So this is all really exciting. I love to say that we think that things in the wine world are so set in stone. That is absolutely not the case. I mean, this law was passed in 2021. That is very recent. And there's things like this happening all the time, even in much older appellations, even in France. Yes, there's some innovation going on and new appellations being created and amended and new grapes being planted, but now I'm going off on a tangent. Anyway, I do hope that was helpful in understanding the German wine laws at the level 3 level a little better. I mainly wanted to use this time to put it into context as to how these laws have come into play and a little bit of the history of German wine laws. Okay, in my newsletter, I've started a section called Study Tips. And no matter what level you are at, level 1, 2, or 3, I've got custom study tips for your level. And I'm going to start introducing some essay questions for my level 3 folks, and maybe even some questions, like multiple choice questions on wine laws, since we're going to continue on with this theme for a little longer. If you are not on the newsletter yet, go to wineeducate.com and you'll see the green button at the top says newsletter sign up, and voila, you know what to do. All right, I would like feedback, please, on these lessons. If you like them, I think it's interesting. I know it's interesting for me from going from the level 2 curriculum to the level 3 and seeing how it builds. Already you can see that for level 2, it's like, here are the facts you need to know. And then level 3, they're giving you information and facts, but I feel like it needs a little bit more context. And that's what's going to help you remember it, right? Okay, next week, I think we're going to do Bordeaux. Yeah, we'll do Bordeaux. All right, friend. See you next week.